we're going to have on Barry Chamish, a prolific author, good friend of Omega Man Radio. I hope you tuned into the program we had with him the other night. Fantastic program. And Barry is back tonight. He's going to be talking about one of his books called Return of the Giants. You're not going to want to miss this. It is not too late to call a friend. Have them tune in. Hope you have your coffee ready. Without further ado, let me go to the telephone line. Barry Chamish, are you on with us tonight?
I am.
Brother, thank you so much for coming back. It's always an honor to have you on.
My pleasure. I don't understand one thing, though. I'm sort of new in America, 5 years or so. You have a holiday for furniture salesmen. I'm trying to work out what this holiday is. I believe it's laborers in the furniture industry offer their wares cheaper.
Oh, well, Barry, actually, I'm surprised we even have it. There's not any jobs left here. They've all been sent to China, so where are the laborers now? We don't have too many left.
Well, you're saying that there was a holiday celebrating laborers?
I still scratch my head and wonder, and when I see a holiday coming, man, I just say, come on. That means the banks aren't going to be open. That means, my goodness, I can't get any work done. So it meant something when I worked 9 to 5 for the man, but now when you work for yourself, it's just a pain in the butt. But
this holiday is for employees.
Apparently so. But I really don't know.
About this one doesn't make any sense. I've had trouble with other ones. Martin Luther King Day doesn't make sense either. But they gave him a holiday, and I guess they gave the laborers a holiday. They just hand out long weekends to obscure things in this country.
Well, you probably wouldn't like Costa Rica at all. When I lived down there for 2 years, they had like a holiday every week, and they had a holiday just for the horses. I mean, would you believe it? Everybody gets out on the side of the road, and they just they get a beer and a lawn chair, and they get on the side of the road, and they watch these horses parading through town. I never could figure it out. But
all right, that would be Horse Day.
Horse Day, that's right. But at any rate, Barry, let's start out with you giving out your website and how people can get a hold of your books that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Well, I think it's a little early to do that. First of all, my website, the book we're speaking about, Return of the Giants, is not on the website. Oh, maybe a little bit, but there used to be a website promoting the book, and I've decided it's not worth keeping up because it's used against me by people. He's writing about UFOs, so my politics must be all wrong. Now, in fact, I'm not a UFO writer. When I was living in Israel, I was a niche writer. I would look for any niche that no one else had filled, and I try to make a living writing all kinds of stuff. And as it happened, I had an interest in UFOs from my days in the Army. I had a very interesting, I used to be a missile shooter, and we had the equipment. Well, what's the equipment? Really good binoculars, it comes down to. But, radar, if you really, really expect an attack, you've got radar. You've got all kinds of things. And in the summer of 1980, the skies were filled with, I would say, satellites flying information. But we were watching them night after night. And my fellow soldiers were divided into 2 camps. The first camp was my camp, that this is just genuine UFOs. I mean, these things would fly informations of 3, 7, but the point is they could turn 90 degrees on the spot. Look, there's just some things that can't be done. At least as far in our world, it can't be done. And flying and turning like it's a corner, you just turn left. is not something we can do. Which the other group, the majority was saying we've got secret weapons, and we're watching secret weapons being flown, and again, we don't have a weapon that can turn on it. Well, 90 degrees on the spot. These things were fly. They were doing things that can't be done in our science. You don't have anything that can do that. You've got to take a bit of a corner there. You just can't. You have to actually fly the 90 degrees. You don't just turn it on the spot. So, well, to make a long story short, this was the beginning of my interest in Israel anyways. Well, what it comes down to is we had a real fight in our unit, and it was actually getting divisive. So a few of us went to our officers and said, just bring someone in here and tell us what we're seeing and get this over with. Well, one morning we were awoken and told to put on civilian uniforms. There's two kinds of clothes, one for inside the base and one for outside the base. We were supposed to put the outside the base clothes on and stand in threes at attention, and surprise, surprise, we didn't know what it was about, but we did it. We got dressed in civilian uniforms, and we lined up in threes, and they told us to stand at attention, and then they introduced a guy, a colonel, I would guess. He had these maple leaves on his shoulder, epaulette. No, they were actual steel maple leaves. He was a colonel, something high up. They told us to stand at ease, and they introduced him. He's from the meteorological department. Why, I don't know, but that's what they said he was from. And they let him talk, and he said, we understand that you soldiers have been seeing unusual items in the sky. He says, if you tell anyone this, you'll be spreading panic and you'll be put on trial. And that was the end of his speech.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, yeah, I mean...
He was serious, wasn't he?
Well, as serious as you can be. You can't stop people from talking. But nonetheless, if it got out, yeah, you go to trial. It was a threat to keep our mouths shut, but not a, it wasn't a death threat. It was just most people don't want to go to trial, but people still talked. I mean, you can't stop everything. Nonetheless, the point is the Air Force really didn't want this getting around, and frankly, I don't think they knew what it was either. In fact, I'll bet you anything they didn't know what it was. It was a worldwide wave of these low-flying satellite-like flotillas. They were seen worldwide, but, well, I mean, I would...
Now, Barry, to give us some sort of sense of time, what year was this more or less? When are we talking about? Was this the
summer of 1980?
Okay, summer of 1980. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. I know that Israel is surrounded by enemies, and it has to be on guard. I mean, I think someone told me that there's always a fighter pilot sitting in the cockpit ready to scramble if they encounter a threat on the radar.
I told you this. First of all, that's not exactly true, but nonetheless, this story is, again, from my book, and I've related it. I was in the Air Force, and they used to bring pilots to lecture to us.
Okay.
Well, we shot missiles. They would tell us the most vulnerable spot to shoot a missile, like we had a choice. I mean, these were heat-seeking missiles. Nonetheless, they would come and tell us about the vulnerabilities of the enemy aircraft and how you can make sure you don't aim at one of ours and this kind of baloney. This would happen, once every 6 months we'd have a pilot in. So after these UFOs hit, I said, to heck with it, I'm going to interview pilots. Now, you have to understand the difference between a civilian journalist interviewing a pilot and a fellow soldier. He was at ease. I was in his Air Force, and I wasn't acting as a journalist. I was very, very curious already. So I remember two pilots. I can recall two of them. That the lecture would end, and I would stay behind until I could meet the pilot in person. And I just said, "Have you ever chased a UFO?" And one chased one over Haifa, and one chased one over Jerusalem, and they both told me the same story, that, in fact, it's not all that uncommon. The one over Haifa said he almost caught up with it, then it took off in a flash. The one in Jerusalem said basically the same story. It went into Jordanian airspace, and I couldn't fly. The point is that they were scrambled and told to chase lights that shouldn't have been over Israel, and it's not uncommon, and this I can testify to. Not a very big selection of pilots, but the two I spoke with, and I won't dive into it. I also spoke with an officer who was more denied things.
You know, I love the juicy, nitty-gritty details, so please.
Well, the pilots both were scrambled, and they said it's not uncommon, and that's all. It's not a big deal story, but the Air Force really is not releasing any information whatsoever, by the way. I mean, nothing.
Well, where I was going with it was, I understand you have to be on alert, so I would imagine some fighter pilots were scrambled, and they're starting to see this all the time. They probably got pretty annoyed with it.
They haven't seen it in at least 12 years.
Wow.
The UFO wave ended pretty well completely in the year 1999. But there, again, what we don't know and about pilots, I got a glimpse of. And that's all, and this thing has been repeated. But the Israeli Air Force is not ready to scramble jets against UFOs day and night. But
well, you know, we got kind of a similar story here in the United States, in Roswell. And, you know, they scrambled the Air Force down there. They confiscate.
60 years ago.
Yeah.
60 years ago. Much has changed since then. And anyways, that's a story that most people know. What I'm about to talk about, most people don't know. And I'm going to go straight into it. I'm really not going to rehash Roswell's and stuff. What I'm talking about was not marginal, and it was front page, front page news items in Israel beginning in 1987 and ending in 1999.
Well, I want to make one preface to it. I don't think things are coincidence, Barry. You are a man who is a prolific author. Okay, you look for the facts. As in our other show, when I went to speculate, you said, let's stick to the facts. So if there was any man that could be chosen to cover this story, I think you would be the man. And so I think that there was a divine hand in all this. But
I had to earn a living. I just had to find different ways to earn a living.
Well, I'm glad you were on the ground to see this happen, so now we can get the facts. So dive on in.
I didn't see the UFOs. I saw the witnesses, and I gathered the evidence. But I was there for every one of these witnesses. First of all, I was researching the book. That's the first thing. But later on, all kinds of TV networks started hiring me. My information was remarkably accurate. And, the big ones in the States were the Sightings Show. That was on, I believe it was NBC in the 90s. I did five episodes for them. I was their advisor.
Wow.
Also, Fox TV gave me, a full half hour of primetime TV was devoted to my research. And again, networks came from all over the world. I'm just thinking Germany, Finland, France, Italy, I guess all over Europe anyways. in short, let's start doing this. I may have troubles with my throat today. I'm just getting over a little bit of a flu, but let's see what we can do.
My friend, at any time you want to take a break, take a cup of tea or water, you just shout and we'll go to a break and I'll fill in.
It may happen, but let's get started first. Look, the big first UFO, and again, I repeat, this was front page headlines. And this was not marginal UFO conspiracy writing. This was national news. It happened, I believe, September 23rd, 1987, I believe. It was the night before Yom Kippur. And I want you to keep in mind, as we go on, every single one of the UFO events happens either on a Sabbath, Friday or Saturday, or on a Jewish holiday. And this is very, very hard to explain. That's one of the tough ones to explain. Another tough one is, why wasn't it happening in Syria or Jordan or Egypt? Why just Israel? How come we got all these events and they didn't? And there are major questions that Israel was targeted en masse by every type of strange UFO you can imagine over the next 13 years. Now, the first one happened with Ami Akhrai. That was the name of the witness. And needless to say, I met him. I've met all the people I speak about. They're all in the book, all interviewed. Ami Akhrai got famous because he was the first, and also his incident was really, really quite outstanding. He's driving home. He lives just to the north of Haifa. Well, he sees what he describes as a banana-shaped craft following him on the highway, and then it starts wobbling, and he pulls the car to the side. He thinks it's a helicopter in trouble. He wasn't, you have a banana flying beside you. You're not, you go back to your reality. And the best he could come up with was the helicopter was going to crash. So he parks his car, and he looks, and he gets out, and this thing, whatever it is, and we have an idea what it is, I'll explain shortly. He's on the coastal road, right beside the Mediterranean Sea, just south of Haifa, at a place called Shikmona Beach. This craft wobbles from side to side, and then it just takes, well, all right, here's the events. He's out of his car. He sees this red banana-shaped craft in the sky above Shikmona Beach. It wobbles from side to side, and then there's a tremendous flash of light. The light ends, and he sees the craft take off over the Mediterranean. That was his incident. So there's a lot of other minor detail we don't need to know. All we need to know is he goes to the police and tells them what he saw, and they said, wait till after the holiday. That is after Yom Kippur. And he gave, the police gave him the number of Israel's only ufologist. Back then, that was Hadassah Arbel. She has now disappeared into the world of religion, and for whatever reason, she was all we had back in 1987. And pretty well, that's all that's left today after the wave ended, and the government really did crush the ufology movement with all its heart. Nonetheless, the holiday ends. He phones Hadassah Arbel, and they go back to Shikmona Beach. I'll describe the beach shortly. Let's first describe what they found. They go walking along the beach, and they find, a photographic image. The sand somehow is black.
Wow.
Well, no, I mean, let's more
almost
than one.
Crystallized in the glass?
No, there's nothing crystal about it. Now, let me finish. The inside was really a diagram of the UFO. That's what the shape was. It was 15 meters long, and there are pictures, all kinds of pictures of it. The main thing, well, that was pretty well remarkable in itself, that the craft took a picture of itself and blasted it on the beach. But in the right-hand corner is, now this is not burnt sand now, this is vegetation that somehow avoided burning. Within this black disc, there is a picture in unburnt grasses. Clear as day, by the way. The being driving this craft, he's seated in front of a dashboard of some kind, with his hand on some kind of gear shifter. There it is. He's about 3.5 feet tall, and we have not only the disc itself in burnt sand, you have the driver also in this pictograph that was burnt onto the sands of Shikmona Beach. Now, just so you know, this was one of the big items on sightings, and I went to Haifa and we interviewed lots of people involved in Shikmona Beach. It grew, but we interviewed Ami Akhrai, and we got the sand, and we got the burnt sand, and it all went back to the sightings physicist.
Did they take any radiation samples to see if there was any kind of
there was
trace
no
left?
radiation.
Okay.
This wasn't atomic. This was definitely not an atomic blast. It was heat. Well, anyways, there's, oh my goodness, what's his name? Professor, all right, for now it's slipped. It'll come back in 1 second. The sightings tested the sand, and by the way, it was tested in Israel as well previously, but they confirmed that right in front of their cameras, in fact, when they put the camera light on the sand, the black part melted away.
Wow.
And what they concluded was a very low melting carbon. It melted at about 130 degrees Fahrenheit, covered the sand, and that's what the pictogram was made out of. All right,
amazing.
That's the end of Shikmona 1. Now, you had about 10,000 people a day at Shikmona Beach looking at this thing. 8 months later, there's an Israeli on Shikmona Beach, and he sees pretty well the exact same thing that Ami Akhrai saw 8 months before. A craft, a snap, a bunch of light, and off it goes. All right. Okay, I'm getting a little buzz on the line. Are you still there?
Oh, still with you. Yes, sir. You're coming through great. And if you're just tuning in, we're listening to Barry Chamish. He's on live tonight on the Mega Man Radio. His website is barrychamish.com. Also, the books that we're talking about are up on lulu.com.
No, it's Lulu, and I'll do that later. We're talking about one book only, Return of the Giants. All right. Now, 8 months later, another disc in the sky, another witness, and another, it's about 100 yards from the Akhrai disc. You have the same, there are subtle differences, but it's the same shape, 15-meter burnt in the sand image of another UFO. Now, if this wasn't enough, let's see, about 5 months later, this all happened in 87, 88. I think it was September 87 and then June 88, and then at the end of the summer, it's all in my book. These are details I won't dwell on. In a period of about a year, 3 UFOs hit Shikmona Beach. 2 of them left images of themselves burnt on the sand. And the third one was witnessed by 2 teenage lovers, I assume. They were on the beach, and this craft didn't just take a picture, it blew up into what they said were thousands of pieces. Once again,
the earth literally shook for them that night, didn't it?
Yes, they had a good night. It was the night. Alon Eilat was the guy. It doesn't matter. I know these details, and no one's going to remember them. I'll stick with the main characters. The point is, Shikmona Beach had erupted a new field of ufology in Haifa. And by the third blast, or the third explosion, or whatever was going on, the sea was filled with glowing rocks that when you pick them up, they weren't hot. And they just turned to dust in your hands. All kinds of scientists, the public. I mean, there were ice cream trucks there. That's how many people were going down to Shikmona Beach to watch this stuff. In short, the rock material was magnesium. Thousands of shards of magnesium, all pulled out of the sand, including the ocean. We gave some to sightings, and they actually confirmed what Israeli scientists had already confirmed, that it was magnesium. Something happened the third time. Nobody could say with certainty what it was, but the craft exploded into shards. You know, this is the middle of the night. You saw the shards. They were sparkling. Well, now let's look at Shikmona Beach. And this is where it gets, this is where there's a little biblical side to it. 100 yards, 150 yards, right on top of the bluff overlooking Shikmona Beach, is, oh my goodness, whose shrine is it? The biblical prophet
Ezekiel?
No.
Talking about the flying chariots?
No.
Daniel?
No.
Wait a minute. Enoch.
I'll think of it. He's a major.
Elijah?
Elijah.
There we go.
Elijah's tomb is on top of Shikmona Beach. It's a 2,400-year-old shrine.
Wow, really? Now that's news here.
Well, it's not news. I mean, what's news is what I'm getting to. There's shrines all over Israel.
You see, brother, you take it for granted, but when those in the West that have never been to the Holy Land, now I have been fortunate to go twice, but for people who have not been, you know, when you read the stories and you actually go there, this stuff comes alive. But I mean, Elisha, this was the guy who was caught up in the whirlwind chariot. But
that's how he died.
Yes.
While he was alive, Elijah challenged the Canaanites to a duel of the gods. He said, "Oh, my God can roast a bull in 1 second." And the Canaanites challenged him, and they spent all night preparing their bull. They tethered a bull, and they did prayers, and nothing happened. The next night, Elijah shows up, and he pours water on his bull, and within 1 second, there's a flash from the sky, and the bull is supper. Now, over this spot, a shrine was erected.
Wow.
Now, I don't know, there's no wild part yet, except it's a tourist attraction. Now, what's going on below on Shikmona Beach? There are strange, and I mean strange, architectural remains that you don't see everywhere. They're not typical archaeological remnants. These include circles. And, again, I would say about 15 meters in diameter. And I went to there's a marine research station next to Shikmona Beach. I went in there just to ask the scientists who were working there, what are these circles in the Mediterranean? And they said that there had been earthquakes and the Mediterranean used to be farther away, and these were ritual baths. And I didn't buy that. You don't put a ritual bath. All right, 100 yards from the ocean is still a waste of time. You put a ritual bath where you don't have any other way to bathe, and you don't put them by the shore, even if there was an earthquake. That's too close to the ocean to build a ritual bath. I didn't like the explanation, but that's the best they had. But more important, something very, very strange did happen. Michael Hesselman, he's a German ufologist. I became good friends with him. Now, believe me, he accepts way too much garbage, is the truth. And that's the problem you have with ufologists all over the place. They'll accept anything. They don't know what the word research means. You have a few good ones, and you've got all kinds of just amateur speculators. Michael Hesselman was a very, very talented amateur speculator who accepted anything he heard. And he went into Elijah's shrine, and there on the wall of Elijah's shrine is an image that is the spitting image of Ami Akrai's UFO. I mean, they point by point, to my way of thinking, they were one and the same. They were the exact same image to my point of view. Now, later on, I took the sightings crew into Elijah's shrine, and they said, nah, it could be a bat. Remember, these are 2,400-year-old pictograms. They went up when the shrine went up. I, in this case, accept Michael Hesselman. That was way too much of a coincidence that they drew this. Call it a bat if you want to. It didn't look much like a bat to me. It looked like a profile of a disc. Nonetheless, it is 2,400 years old, and it is right above, literally above, the Ami Akrai burnt image in the sand. That's what I ended up calling it. And about 200 yards from the second one is in my opinion, a very, very close to spitting image of what was burnt on the sands of Shikmona Beach in 87 and 88. That's the summation of there's lots more, but those are the main points of the Shikmona Beach. Well, again, light from the sky shining on the beach, creating a pictogram incident.
Amazing.
They only get better.
Good grief. You asked why did it happen in Israel. I have my thoughts on that. I mean, this is the center of the...
They were aiming for Lebanon and they missed.
Listen, this is the center of the world, okay, Jerusalem.
This was Haifa.
Well,
Jerusalem barely got a UFO. Jerusalem had almost none. This was in Haifa. The next one is in a place called Kadima. And this is the long and complicated story of the giants. The giants is, well, a little background, I suppose. There are giants in the Bible. In fact, right at the beginning of the Bible, there's a little war in heaven, and God throws out the Nephilim. Nephilim means those that fell. That's what a Nephil is, someone who fell. And supposedly they found the women, human women, fair. There's nothing about the human women finding them fair. So we assume that they were raped because the giants had their way with the human women who they found very fair. And you had, well, for the first years of the Bible, they were just a constant fixture. Well, Joshua sent scouts in to Israel, and they report, actually I think the first time was Moses did it. They report back to Moses that the giants have made allies with the cities of Canaan, and they were terrified of this, and Moses sent them back 40 years in the desert because they weren't ready to fight for the land and all this. There are many, many stories of giants in the Bible. The last one was King David, in his usual murderous rampage, sent his cousin into battle knowing he would lose for some reason. His name was Seth. And he killed a giant with 6 fingers and 6 toes. And that's it, by the way, for the Bible. That's it. There is no more mention of giants from that last incident on. There has not been a recorded giant in Israel in 3,200 years.
Since the time of King David now, he goes out to kill Goliath, and what a lot of people don't know is Goliath had 4 or 5 brothers, didn't he?
Goliath was no giant. He was about 6'6", and David had a sling, and he got him before he could shoot. And again, that was a very tall person for those days. The ones that visited Kedema were 7 feet tall. They were a good half-foot taller. And
now, what about King Og, that had a bed that was about 15 foot long?
Let's not rush every which way. We're not going to get anything done. Okay, at the end, I'll talk about the circle of the giants, and I'll mention King Og of Bashan. But again, this is history.
I'll save my questions because I have a number of them that we're going to have for you. Let me get you back on target there. Take over, my friend.
Yeah. Now we go to Kedema. Now Kedema is it was a moshav. You know what? I'm gonna. This is a very long story. I'm gonna go get some tea.
Absolutely.
My throat is gonna kill me by the end.
Brother, if you can have some lemon and honey, I would recommend you mix that in. We're gonna take. We're gonna give you some time there.
Give me 3 minutes to clear my throat. This next story is going to take even a half an hour to do properly. So
take all the time you need, my friend. This is live radio, and
well, give me 3 minutes.
And well, you know, I want you to feel relaxed, like you're in my home telling a story. So,
I am. I just need something in my throat. It's clogging up right now. 3 minutes. I'll be back.
Absolutely. You're listening to Omega Man Radio Network. We've got special guest tonight, Barry Chamish. We're talking about Return of the Giants. Barry Chamish is a prolific writer. Give a little bit of a background on him. He was with the Israeli Defense Force, IDF. When you go to Israel, you're required to do mandatory military duty. So Barry, like all other Israelis, he did his time in the service, came out, and got into the writing profession, and is just a prolific writer. He has written all kinds of books. You can get up at Lulu, and we're going to put a link up there in the show notes, or BarryChamish.com, CHAMISH.com. And it's a pleasure to have Barry on because, you know, he looks for the facts. And, you know, he'll keep you on to the facts, and it's nothing but the facts, man. But I certainly have my questions we're going to ask Barry tonight. I have my own thoughts. Well, you know, I want to appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. I actually hope that you have tomorrow off. I'm really not against holidays. Holidays are good, and it's good to have some downtime, be able to sleep in, not have to worry about getting up at 5 a.m., and, you know, be able to relax, fellowship, stay up late, go to Waffle House at midnight. Would you believe that I go to Waffle House like at 3 a.m. sometimes? Yeah, I get out of here, and sometimes I have the late night munchies. So I'll go up there and order a chicken dinner. You know, that's the 2 pieces of chicken breast with some hash browns, smothered and covered. For those of you who don't know what a Waffle House is, what the heck is Omega Man talking about? It is a 24-hour diner. Okay, and they have specialties like waffle. You can eat a waffle 24 hours a day. Of course, I go over there. I get the chicken. I get the smothered and covered, which is onions with cheese on the hash browns. Okay, You can get a side order of grits if you like it. Those of you up in the north probably never heard of grits. It's great. Put a little bit of butter and salt in it. It's, you know, just right. But yeah, I'll go over there, have a cup of coffee, and you know, sometimes get a late night snack. Now understand why Puff Daddy Combs, P. Diddy, as some of you call him, Sean Combs. He said he lost all kinds of weight when he would stop eating, leaving the studio late at night. And yeah, I can kind of understand. You know, you get ramped up, and you don't really want to go to bed right away. So you go out and, you know, have some afterglow, as we used to call it, you know, after church, you know. And I kind of look at this as like going to church, because I see all my friends every week and every night, actually. And we have a great time. And then, you know, I just go out and go to Waffle House sometimes. But I digress. We've got a double show planned for you tonight, by the way. We've got Barry Chamish on. And then at 11 p.m. Eastern Time tonight, I'm going to have Jason Homelon. And stand by. Let me get Barry back. All right. A little bit of dead air, but the Omega Man is back. I was answering my cell phone. I don't put on any airs on this show. This is a live show. We're going to have some fun. That's the whole point. And so, yeah, where was I at? Let's see. I was talking about the Waffle House. Let me think. Oh, yeah, double show tonight. We're going to have Jason Homelon tonight at 11 p.m. talking about God's economy. Honest weights and measures, the way it should have been set up here in America. Not this fiat currency. You know, paper money, worth pennies, backed up with no silver and gold. And he'll give you an insight into God's economy and how you can get on it and be blessed in the process. Okay, stand by. I'm going to dial up Barry. Okay, the phone is dialing. Here we go. Barry is back.
Hi.
What kind of tea are you drinking tonight, my friend?
No, I just poured any kind of liquid down me. This next sequence is very complicated, but it's the name of my book. It's Return of the Giants, and this is why it's called Return of the Giants. Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good.
We are here, and if you're just tuning in, we're listening to Barry Chamish tonight. Yes, we are.
Now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we're back on with Barry Chamish. You're tuning into Omega Man Radio Network. This is a live broadcast. Barry, let me turn the mic back over to you.
All righty. Now, first of all, before we get started, the name of my book is Return of the Giants. And here's how you get it. You go to lulu.com, that's Lulu.com. You'll see a search box right in my name, CHAMISH. That will take you to all my books, or you can just write in Return of the Giants, and you'll get straight to that book. I also have a DVD with all kinds of these films and TV sequences, and, well, here's my phone number, 904-315-8079. That's 904-315-8079. You got all that?
Fantastic. And I'm going to put that in the show notes tonight, folks. Barry, I didn't know you had a DVD. I'm going to be ordering a copy. I love video.
Just send me your address.
So so you actually stumbled onto this. You're in the Air Force, the IDF, and you'll see these.
I stumble onto it in the Air Force, most certainly. The Air Force was certainly a good training ground. I stumbled on it because, well, in part I'm interested in the subject, but like I say, I was a niche writer, and this was a market nobody else was writing about, and I took it.
Well, you mentioned before the break that, there are a few references to the giants. And I have to tell you, it's compelling because I have no doubt in my mind that the earth was visited by fallen angels who took wives, impregnated them, and created these half-man, half-angel offspring. And I heard it even got more graphic than that, Barry. I heard that they were not satisfied with that, and these angels started to mate even with animals. They became cannibalistic.
Well,
and,
I don't cover this. I don't write about this at all. So we're going way off, and let's get back to modern times and not quite possibly miss.
Well, I'm kind of setting you up. I mean, in other words, clearly they died out at the flood, but then there was a return.
I know you're setting me up. Let me go on to Kadima.
Go for it, my friend.
All right. On April 20th, 1993, Tzipora Carmel, Tzipora actually, doesn't matter. She's an attractive blonde woman who raises dogs and has a tiny little cottage in Kadima. She feels compelled to go outside. It's Saturday morning. She goes outside and she sees what she thinks is a new fruit silo. And she says to herself, why would anyone put up a fruit silo overnight? Then she looks to her left. This is all happening instantaneously. She sees the fruit silo, says, what's it doing there? Looks to her left. She sees a 7-foot creature.
Whoa.
Well, it's wearing metallic clothing, but it's got, she calls it a beekeeper's hat. The face was hidden by it. And she looks at it, and, it's about 30 yards away. I went into the field where a year later, the circles made by both the craft and the creature was nothing grew on them. Nothing. Everywhere else was plenty of vegetation, tons of it. There, nothing. Anyway, she thinks, she calls it telepathically. I don't know if she shouted. She said telepathically. She said, take off the hat so I can see your face. And it says no. And she says, why not? And it answers her, that's just the way it is. And then she has this thought or desire to go back into her house. And she does. She goes back in. It's now about 7 in the morning. 20 minutes later, she goes out again, and it's gone. Now, this was a question the first time around of rumor. She told a neighbor who told another neighbor. The rumor was out when on April 30th, she had the same thing happen again with the same, she had another circle in her backyard. Now, when I say backyard, Kadima is a moshav. It used to be a farming community, and there still are farm fields. It's become gentrified, if you want to call it that, lately. But nonetheless, she had a big, big field. And 10 days later, another circle, another sighting. But this time, if Israel had ufologists that were hidden since the Shimona Beach incident, they all came out she became a focus. And eventually it was we, including me. I was there for these circles. Inside the circle were metal shards. And this was in circle after circle, and you put your hand in it, and it was red. There was some kind of red fluid in her second circle. The first circle wasn't properly tested. What tested? You pick out a metal shard and you find out what it is. What's it doing there? And your hand is red. When I first put my hand in a circle, a fresh one from the night before, I didn't know what was on my hand. I mean, it could have been radioactive. I tried washing this stuff out, and it was sticky.
Wow. Yes.
Well, again, little by little. Now, the first thing you have to know is that eventually I had my my silicon tested every which way, first of all by the sightings team, which came to the same conclusion as the Israel Geological Institute, Pisa University of Manchester. I went wherever I went, and I had the opportunity. I had it tested. All the results are the same. This was almost pure silicon. I think it was 99.35%, with slight variances up to 54, down to 23. It doesn't matter. It was almost pure silicon. And in 93, by the way, that was an expensive material. It's gotten cheaper with the computer industry, but that's what was strewn in the circle. As for the oil was, well, it was red oil. It had lots of iron and aluminum in it, but it had a big spike in cadmium, which, again, the folks at Sightings were extremely confused about, because cadmium is not primarily in oil form, but it's all been tested. And this is the issue that's going to become very important, because whatever Ciporet had happened in her backyard started happening all over the place.
Whoa.
Now, one person who knew Ciporet maybe to wave at the supermarket was Shosh Yehud. The reason I say this is that 7 women had these, that I know about, had these giant visitations, and they didn't know each other. This is the only case where there was some recognition. Nonetheless, Hapamach Street, that's where Shosh and Ciporet lived in Kadima. Shosh's story in its own way is just as bizarre. She's asleep. The husband remembers nothing. None of the husbands remember a thing. All the women, I want you to know, I interviewed 5 of the 7. All the women were 39 years old. All had white-collar jobs. They were so similar in background, age, exact same age. Well, let's just say there were a lot of strange coincidences. My guess, and this is based, again, on what the women told me.
Now, Barry, they're all about the same age, 39, same level, same career?
Same level of career.
Okay, now...
Tellers, travel agent, same level of career.
Okay, so they have these
they're
UFO...
intelligent women, not brilliant, but intelligent.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. What they had in common was they have all this stuff in their yard. Did you interview any of them and ask them, did they claim to have been visited at night and sexually abused?
Interesting question. They told me. I didn't ask them. 2 of the women certainly had peculiar stories. Now, I was going to do this at the end because you don't know who the women are yet. I'll just say that 2 of the women, their names are Chana Somach and Batya Shimon. You'll meet them shortly. Both had pregnancies they could not account for.
Oh, wow.
And Chana showed us her medical reports from what is called Kupat Cholim. That is, look, Israel has a normal health insurance policy where people don't suffer because they get sick. America's got an extremely sick medical profession and insurance profession. She showed me from the clinic. It's called she just showed very, very good and believable reports that she was pregnant, and then the pregnancy disappeared, and no really good explanations given for that. It's just reported.
Wow, so she probably had the ultrasounds as proof, didn't she?
Oh, not then she didn't. I mean, you're talking about she's 39. She was pregnant when she was 25. They didn't have ultrasounds then. It doesn't matter. They knew how to tell if you were pregnant.
Yes.
And Batya Shimon, she phoned me from Los Angeles when she was already 39, and she said she's pregnant. what is going on? And she told me it could not have been my husband. We haven't had relations. And two of the women definitely got pregnant under unexplainable circumstances. So let me continue with the story. I assumed that was very much part of what was going on. They weren't after men. They were after women of a certain age. Let's go on. Shush Yehud, Kadima. Now, her story is, in a way, very prototypical of the rest of the stories, because she was asleep in her bed, and the creature that she described is described over and over again. As a matter of fact, the sightings crew had everyone draw pictures, and they were remarkably similar pictures of a 7-foot giant, for lack of another word. They're not human, but they're not far off, apparently. Bald, barely any nose, eyebrows, floating, not walking, floating, she said. And they spoke through telepathy, and she understood them, and vice versa. And what he said is what he said on other occasions. I'm not here to hurt you, don't be afraid. And immediately Shush saw him as a very, very nice person. With that message, all fear left her, and we heard that one previously as well. What she said is he just floated around her bed, looking at her. And a very important issue, there was no way of getting into her house. She had blinds. I don't know what you call them in English. In Israel, they're electric. They go up and down. They're electric blinds. They don't have Venetian blinds there. They have electric blinds. Her blinds were down. The creature could not have got into her room except through the wall.
He probably just said, "Hey, I'm just here to cuddle, that's all."
Yes, he said things like that. He asked her if she wanted a massage. The usual. And, well, she gets up in the morning. Now, listen, the business about how he had to have come through the wall. She said that there was no other way of getting into the locked house. Now, this is very important because these visions, these manifestations, they're not physical in the way we understand physics. We can't walk through walls. We don't know how to walk through walls. These creatures could walk through walls. And again, I provide no answer. I'm not a futuristic physicist, but that's what they did. They walked into her room through the outside wall. Now, in the morning, she felt that she had dreamt it all. Well, then she opens her blinds, and there is that same 4.5 meter in diameter circle that were found twice at Tzipora Carmel's home. She had one in her backyard, and she told, and in came the ufologists, and they had, this time they had magnetometers, whatever magnetism is registered on, they had that this time around. They started getting more sophisticated. And the sightings continued, and they got more interesting. And needless to say, whenever an incident happened, by this time I was showing up and reporting on it.
And Barry, there are people showing up to listen tonight. I can see them in the chat room and listening. This is a subject that a lot of people are interested in.
Well, I've got a book, and you're never going to see another book on the subject written. So if they're interested, all right, we'll do that later. Let's do the Giants again. Now, Hannah Somach is, again, she's a travel agent, 39, same age. All the visitations take place on a Friday night or Saturday morning, all of them, which, by the way, that's a really hard coincidence to rationally explain. But Friday night, she goes to her kitchen at 3 in the morning. It's Saturday morning, 3 a.m. She's got a poodle. The poodle lifts in the air, is barking like crazy, all right? It drags her down to the kitchen because her poodle is barking. She turns on the light, and the poodle lifts in the air and smashes against the kitchen wall. And she's watching this, right? Imagine this is what's a typical Saturday morning. The poodle goes flying full speed into the wall. She felt that something did that to the poodle. So she tried to go outside, and she had a glass door. It was blocked. She didn't see what blocked her. She said there was something that prevented her from going outside. She sees in her backyard the same thing that everybody, 7-foot, neon clothing, large eyes, bald, and it's looking at her family pickup truck. And again, I asked the same question. You come supposedly from tens of light years away to examine a 69 Corolla truck. I mean, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. This is technology that you would have no interest in, you would think, and certainly wouldn't come very far to see it. Nonetheless, now this is where the story in its own way is amusing, but ultimately her family was haunted by these things. She says to the creature, she says to him, "What did you do to my dog?" That was her first concern. And the giant turned to her from the truck and said, "Go away, you're bothering me." They didn't give profound messages. He said, "If I wanted to, I could crush you like your aunt. Now go back to your husband." And for reasons, again, just like all the other ones she didn't understand, she went back to her husband. If fine details are off, will be excused later, because the husband look in her backyard shortly afterwards. They saw the circle, and her husband went chasing. This was not in Kadima. This was next door. It was about 2 miles away from Kadima where this took place. Her husband went in the search for the being that attacked the dog and his wife. It's a whole long story, a very human one. But just keep in mind, these giants were not here to convey profound messages. They were very, very short with the people. They didn't want to be bothered. And basically, time after time, told them to get lost.
It sounds like they were here to get their groove on.
Their what?
Their groove on.
What's a groove on?
I mean, they were here to get busy. And they apparently impregnated a couple of these women. Is that what I'm hearing?
I never said that. I said that's my impression. These women, there are two very strange stories where I would think that the women only remember what they're allowed to remember, basically. They seem to be missing a little time, and these creatures may have had their way with them. Not then, but 25 years earlier, I'm sure of it.
Well, you know, that's interesting, because that is typically what a lot of these people are saying all around the world, that they have missing time. So that's a common denominator there.
You know what, I can speculate, and I don't have answers for everything. But what she said, well, what can I tell you? All the women were honest women. And it goes on. I'll give you another story. This one from far away, Rishon-LeZion is, about 60 miles down the coast. Now, Batya Shimon, again, she's a bank teller. And same thing. The women are about of the same attractiveness, whatever that means. You still note it. She was an attractive woman, a bank teller. She's lying in her bed one night, and she's got a couple of them roaming around the house. Once again, the husband vaguely recalls something. Only the wife remembers. Now, in her case was not on a ground floor with a lawn. It wasn't a single dwelling complex. She lived in an apartment block. On the 7th floor, for them to get the apartment from on the 7th floor, they didn't drop by and take the elevator. Okay, they've got these, whatever they are, I don't believe they're physical in the way that we know physical.
They've got to be transdimensional if they can just go right through the walls and walk through matter.
It's a theory.
We've got some questions in the chat room, and they're asking the two ladies that reported that they were pregnant. Did they ever have the babies, or did it just disappear?
Both disappeared after 3 months.
Did they recount maybe having a revisit and some more loss of time where maybe it was harvested?
No.
Okay.
No. Nothing like that. They recounted what they remembered. And what they remembered now in the case of Batya Shimon, she's in, again, her husband is beside her. She sees two of them. They're floating. Again, just like everyone else said, floating, not walking, floating. The same, she calls it neon clothing instead of metallic. They all saw the same clothing. Again, bald, barely a mouth, barely nostrils. This is what they all saw. Now, of her, I'm going to say this now, first night, she had a two-night whammo visit. The first night, one of them goes into the son's bedroom, and he sees an aquarium. And he gets really, really excited by this aquarium. And he calls his buddy over, and they stare at the aquarium. That's what they did. They came, like I say, 40 light years away to stare at an aquarium, and they're gone. Next night, she's got a dozen of them all over her house. They're dusting every shelf with what she calls sulfuric smelling. Smells like sulfur.
That's a good detail. Keep going, my friend.
Well, it's a detail. They dusted. They were roaming around everywhere. She was watching. Well, again, they looked very similar, but they all had the same metal clothing, bald head floating. The whole thing that happened before happened, but this time with lots and lots of them roaming around her apartment. She was the one who phoned me from Los Angeles. She's been haunted by them. Look, I want you to understand that these women, there are another couple, forget them now. These are the big ones. The stories are the most interesting. These women, except for Tsiporit, who turned into an outright flake afterwards, she was buying crystals and pyramids, and she thought it was a wonderful event in her life. All the other women and men will get to the man of next year soon.
Let me insert a question there. When you were pulling these...
I haven't finished the statement yet.
Barry, do you know what time it is?
9.
Brother, it is 9:11. Do you remember the time we did the show last time? I asked you what time it was? I have to document this because I keep seeing 9:11. Well, we may see the significance of that in a future time, and I'll bring you back because you're a witness to this. I don't know what it is. I just keep
9:11. I have another 45 minutes.
No, you got plenty of time, but I'm saying I keep seeing 911, September 11th.
What's so important about 9/11?
It may be that it is a warning that we're getting ready to have another 911 event.
It may be that's just the time right now.
But I keep seeing it. Why would I keep seeing it like every day? Sometimes twice a day.
You remind me when it's 9:56 and we're on to something.
Keep going, my friend. We got plenty of time.
Right. Now again, Batya Shimon. Boy, that threw me off.
Okay, we were talking about you're going to go to the bigger giant sightings, but I wanted to ask you, did you ask them what their religious beliefs were when you were interviewing them?
They were Jewish. What else were they?
Okay, but I'm saying, did they have any thoughts on it? Did they think that they were having an angelic visit?
None of them thought that. All of them, except for Tsiporit, who took it to heart, rued the day that this happened to them. It ruined their lives.
Wow.
Look, I could go through all the film crews I took. Today, I really doubt any of them will talk. But I got them when they were they were ready to talk when I got them filmed. And, well, they're all equally good. Batya told a story with, well, sincerity. They're all sincere. They're all telling the truth. They didn't know each other. It's between April and July of the year 1993, 7 women were visited by giants who didn't know each other. This could not be a conspiracy where 7 women who didn't know each other, all of the same age, got together at a meeting and said, let's fool everybody. We'll make these tremendous discs in our backyard. We'll spill thousands of dollars of silicon in them, and we'll make oil out of cadmium, and we'll fool everybody. That's what you would be asking if this was in any way a contrived conspiracy. Clearly it wasn't. Okay, it's that simple. Now, next year, the last of the official giant sightings, which doesn't mean that what happened afterwards wasn't extremely weird till it ended in August '99. Was pretty well when all was finalized with what this was. You know what? Before I go on, to Herzl Sabatini is his name. He lives in a moshav called Yatzitz, which was only 10 miles from my house. Let's just go. Look, okay, I'll mention this. If you're looking for a reason, and in my book, I was sort of forced to figure out what happened between April and July of 1993 that would bring giants back in serious numbers to Israel, with the Israeli people getting them on TV, getting them in the papers. This was not a buried story. It was a front-page story. And I got to tell you that the worst evil that has hit modern Israel was being formulated in April of 1993, and it was finished and signed in July of 1993, and that was what is called the Oslo Peace Accord. Now, if in fact these giants, and they are in some way unphysical, just keep that in mind. These are not physical beings that we understand anyways. They're in some either supernatural, interdimensional, if you want to call it that. We don't have answers for that. But their arrival, and this is where you could get fairly biblical. In the Bible, I mean, God hates the giants. He despises them. They're the very anathema to the morality he's trying to instill in the Jewish people, and he orders from Joshua to David, all of them, wipe every trace of them off the face of the earth. He really considers them raw evil. Now, in 1993, the rawest evil, the evil that will probably put an end to Israel, was being formulated, and that was the Oslo Peace Accord. They met in January. By April, they had the formula. By July, they signed the formula. And this, boy, it's the greatest piece of evil ever foisted on the Israeli people. It's beyond.
Amen.
Well, I don't know, but amen. But they have to live with this horrific agreement. That's when the giants returned.
Wow.
I'm
so
not sure if that's right.
The agreement
sure it's right about
is
the
being
timing.
signed, and then these giants come back again on the scene.
Well, no. Once it was signed, they were gone. Well, there's one incident that I don't understand entirely, and no one would understand it entirely. That is the incident at Yatzitz on December 23rd, 1994, the year after the Kadima giant landings. From July on, there's nothing. There are rumors, but really nothing. The stuff I've got has, what can you say? We've got physical evidence. We've got labs that can't explain it. We've got, well, photo evidence. I won't do that yet. I mean, you've got this, whatever was landing in Kadima on videotape. There's all kinds of stuff I'm not including that you have to get my book or at least my DVDs for. But what happened in its seats was, again, as big as Ami Akrai and Shikmona Beach. All right, the town sheriff, that's what you call the Mefeked Bitachon in a town in Israel. The American equivalent of sheriff means security officer. His name is Herzl Costantini. He is with his friend Ezra. The house shakes, and they don't know why. I mean, this is out of the way little moshav. They think it's a giant truck. Again, what for? And again, it's a Friday evening. I hate to repeat this. They're all on Friday evenings. Herzl opens the door to see what's going on, and standing in front of him is a 9-foot giant.
Wow.
You heard me, 9 feet. Now, he says his face was filtered out by, he calls it metallic smoke. This story is just filled with things that you could possibly not believe, except the physical evidence is incredible. So he slams the door, tells his friend Ezra to look through the blinds, see what's out there. He looks out the window, and just like a Three Stooges movie, he faints. All right, just like it was that awesome and scary to him. And I met the man. He was not talking. I met him the next day. I was at his seats, and he was not talking. Now, the next day, I want you to know, before I go on with the details, that Herzl Costantini was at the health clinic. That's the word I was looking for. The health clinic, because one of his gonads had blown up to the size of a grapefruit. There was no explanation for this.
Was this before or after meeting the 9-foot tall alien?
Obviously after.
Good.
What do you mean before? Before they were playing cards.
Lord have mercy.
Look, whatever was done, this is another of these mysteries that I don't have an answer for, but he brought the actual documents from the health clinic. It actually happened. But far more relevant, whatever this creature was. And by the way, I have it on film. A couple of kids from the neighborhood filmed the UFO. I'll talk about that at this time shortly. This is a very, very strange case because that creature, that giant, left impossibly deep tracks in the mud for 8.5 kilometers to the next moshav, that was Kerem Shalom. Now, when the sightings team came, I jumped on top of the ground beside one of these tracks. I got in maybe a millimeter. The mud was too thick. You could not look. I'll tell you what the tracks were. They were 35 centimeters at the sole and only 5 centimeters deep at the heel, which means this thing must have been walking on tiptoes. But at 35 centimeters straight down, it would have had to weigh a ton.
Wow.
That's the only way. You can't get in that deep. And that morning, by the way, I took my kid, my young son, to just see the tracks. He put his foot in it. He was young, but he knew this wasn't normal. Nobody who saw those tracks knew it was normal. An associate of mine put plaster down one and made a plaster cast. That's also on my DVD. And out it comes. Whatever it was walking a normal human gait for part of the time.
It sounds like he was wearing high heels or boots or something.
It doesn't matter what he was wearing. His weight pushed him down, not his shoe.
But I thought he was kind of slanting forward to the ball of his foot.
So that's how he was walking. The issue is not that. The issue is the weight. Now, there were times that he had a normal human gait, and then it would skip 12 feet until the tracks began again. And then suddenly there was a third imprint, not as deep. It was round, and I assumed it was a walking stick. And by the way, I stick with that assumption to this day. That was some sort of walking stick. The point is it went for 8.5 kilometers. And, well, now Herzl Sabatini, he closes the door. His friend is half unconscious. And he phones, first of all, he phones the Army. And he says, he describes what's happening, and they don't exactly believe him. All right? He says, look, a giant came to my door, and there are tracks outside my cottage. That doesn't sound so good. But eventually he told them who he was and that he's the sheriff of Yatzit, and the Army finally decided it was some sort of terrorist attack, and they arrived within 20 minutes, a platoon of anti-terror soldiers were there. They looked at they followed the tracks, and it went out over their radio, and it went into the news. By Sunday, all of Israel knew about Yatzit, and 8.5 kilometers of tracks you couldn't explain. Now, the police, this was handed over to the police. It was no longer an Army issue because there were no terrorists. So they handed it to the police. A lot of the public, and by the way, there was an ice cream truck in the seats too. The public went where the news was, and this was front page news.
I was about to say, somebody should have set up on the side of the road and made some money.
They did. Now, all the police were left with it. They went investigating. And by the way, it gets weirder and weirder. Those two boys, one was 13, one was 11. Tzachi and Tzachi, it doesn't matter. There are so many people. I have their film as well. But they had a weirder incident. Their dog was barking.
What I want to know, Barry, is it permissible to eat a kosher hot dog in Israel?
Why not?
I love them. I go down to Five Guys and a burger, but that's what they should have been selling instead of ice cream out there.
They sold ice cream. Now, back we go. They're on the sofa, on the porch outside. The dog is barking. It's chained to its doghouse. A beam of light, and I was there. It burnt his doghouse to the ground. There was no more doghouse. It was just ashes. Half the sofa was burnt. I took that stuff to be analyzed as well. Whatever sent that 9-foot giant roaming around your seats also burnt up a house, well, a porch of a house in your seats, not killing the dog, just scaring the bejesus out of the dog. Just like what happened to Hannah. That dog was still completely stunned when I saw it. Utter fear.
It was having post-traumatic stress disorder.
It went through a very difficult night. Now, the public wants to know what caused all of this in its seats. It's not a few people. The police have a whole community who want to know what happened and are they safe and so forth. Now, the police gave up, and they handed it over to an expert from the Nature Reserve Society. There's a society that takes care of the outdoors in Israel, and they're supposedly the experts in the outdoors. The police handed it over to them to investigate. They had a press conference. They actually had reporters. And when the representative from the local Nature Reserves Authority said that what caused those tracks was a camel. That's
Come on.
what they said. It was a camel. And, well...
You don't have any camels in Israel, do you?
There are tons of camels in Israel.
Oh.
And people said, the reporters and the townspeople said, in that case, it would have had to have been a bipedal floating camel with a cane. and then they added antelope, if you can believe this. They said it was an antelope. In the end, the conclusion was, you know what? It could have been something from outer space. We don't know what this thing was. That was the final police. Now, that's what the Nature Reserve Society said. The police final report. Okay, they're stuck with a crime that can't be easily explained. They explained it as a cult. A very strange and mysterious cult did all this. Now, I'd like to join this cult. It sounds like a ball. You get to dress as giants, scare the heck out of the town sheriff, make impossible tracks for 8.5 kilometers in the sand, and burn a doghouse down. This sounds like a terrific cult.
Now, did they also smell the sulfur scent also in the air?
There was no sulfur in the air. Sulfur has not... There was no sulfur. Nobody smelled any sulfur. Now that really, on December 23rd, 1994, that was the end of the Giants. Okay, that's the essential book on the Giants. Now, you know what? We are actually running out of time. If we're only going to do the Giants, there are a lot of other stories, an awful lot of very peculiar stories that went on for a while, but I'm going to just finish off one story that seems to interest you, and I did do it as part of the Giants book. In Israel, there is, on the Golan Heights, a very mystifying megalith, if you can call it that. It's like, it is really the Stonehenge of Israel.
Wow.
It is, well, I'll describe, it's called Gilgal Rephaim, the Circle of the Giants. It has been studied pretty seriously. It's 5,200 years old. That means that it's over 500 years older than the pyramids, and it's over 200 years before Stonehenge was even thought of.
Well, maybe that would be, you think that's from Genesis 6?
No. It's 500 years. No, now you got me lost again.
Because Adam is about 6,000 years ago, right?
No, forget that. Don't even do that. It's got nothing to do with zero to do with what I do. Now, you've got 5 concentric circles. There are 2 openings in the concentric circles. Now, the astronomers have been there and they've decided that this is where Sirius rose 5,200 years ago, and this is, I think it was the solar solstice. The sun would go through this. All kinds of theories around this, but you've got a major, major problem. First of all, it is absolutely enormous. It's 159 meters in diameter, made of loose stone. Heavy loose stone, some of it 2 tons. You've got a people living 5,200 years ago who would never, first of all, they didn't have the technology to figure out that you can pile loose stones to a height of about 6-7 feet.
I don't agree, because Genesis says that Tubal-Cain was a bronze artificer.
This has nothing to do with Genesis.
But I'm talking about, people think that as time goes on, we increase in technological know-how.
Sheep herders of the Golan Heights didn't build another megalith. They didn't even build a house that remains. Now let's go back to normality again. Now what you've got 5,200 years ago on the Golan Heights were not people capable of they didn't have the society, let alone the technology, to put together some sort of, they think, astronomical. There are major questions about what it was. But surrounding the circle of the giants, now this is, well, if they're connected, they're called dolmens. And on the Golan Heights, there are 8,500 of them. Some are burial chambers, some are not. They don't know why the dolmens were put up. However, the Circle of the Giants has a tradition behind it. Just an oral tradition, for whatever that's worth. Now, the Golan Heights was in the land of Bashan. Now, Bashan, they know that Bashan was populated by whatever were the Rephaim, or the giants of the Bible. That's written down. When Og, who was their king, died, they set up a little museum just to show his bed. His bedstead was 13 feet in length, making him about 11 feet tall if the Bible actually did this accurately. The point of the matter is that it was in the land of Bashan that the giants, the Rephaim, lived in the region of about 5,200 years ago, all the way to the all the way to the wars with the Hebrews.
Let me ask you a question. You said Rephaim. Is that one and the same with Nephilim, or are these two different groups?
They're two different things. The Nephilim, at least from the Bible, the Nephilim were those who were kicked out of heaven by God. They were the ones who fell to the earth. They had relations with mortal humans that produced the Rephaim or the Anakim.
Okay, so the Rephaim would be the descendants. They would be the descendants of this crossbreeding. Okay, let me ask you another question, Barry. Have you ever come across the term the Watchers?
I don't know. It doesn't sound terribly familiar.
I didn't know if maybe that was a different category altogether, or maybe that is the Rephaim. But at any rate, okay, that was good. I've heard the term Rephaim, but I didn't know the definition. Let's continue on.
Giants.
Wow.
There are three terms in the Bible for giants. They are Rephaim and Anakim. Those Anakim was the more popular. Rephaim is not far behind, and something called Zamzumim. Zimzumim. Whatever, they're barely mentioned, and it's more obscure.
There were these cities where they dwelled. Did you go to investigate any of those? Are you able to locate them in modern maps?
Of course not. There were no cities like that. What are you talking about? They made a line. If you can find a city on the Golan Heights, good luck. You'll make archaeological history. Now, the reason I mention this is there is a tradition of giants in Israel, and there is an actual physical landmark. Now, if you ever get to the Golan Heights, it won't do you a lot of good unless you take a balloon or a helicopter above the Gilgal Rephaim, because you won't really feel what a complicated and difficult megalith this was to build. From ground level, you cannot tell a thing. All you see are a bunch of walls. It can only be discerned from the air, and there were no mountains, and there was no sight except going up in the air in a balloon or something.
Wow.
Or something. That's the only way you could tell what Gilgal Rephaim really represents.
Have they excavated underground to see if there's anything beneath? Okay.
Nothing. There's a burial cane about 1,000 years, built 1,000 years after the original Gilgal Rephaim. They found a few pots. Nothing much of interest. All I can say is there is a tradition that giants actually did live in Israel, and they left a physical landmark of their arrival 5,200 years ago.
Wow. Now, I didn't know that detail. I have no doubt in my mind that giants are there because I believe the Bible. And it's clear that David went after them. Moses and the children of Israel were told to drive them out of the land.
They were not. They were told they exist, and Moses, far from driving them out of the land, took the Israelites back into the desert for 40 years.
Well, yeah, because of they were murmuring, complaining, and doubt and unbelief.
Well, they were not told to drive them off the land, that's for darn sure.
Well, wait a minute. Now, Caleb and Joshua, and they took the spies in there.
It was Joshua 40 years later when the Hebrew wars began.
Well, but my point was they go in and they spied out the land, and they came back with reports that they were kind of like grasshoppers in the sight of these giants, right?
Yeah, that's one of the biblical passages. Again, you have to understand that they weren't. The tone of the reports was very matter of fact in a way. They weren't surprised to see giants. They just accepted that there were giants. That's actually a better argument than that these things were not uncommon. And again, shall we go back to Israel? How much time do I have?
You've got exactly 50 minutes. I've extended your time.
No, I don't.
Well, you've got 20 minutes in the 2 hours, but this is getting so interesting that I'd love to have you stay on if you can. Your voice will hold out.
I'm not sure it will. I think I'm gonna end with.
Well, then you've got 20 minutes left for our 2-hour show.
Okay, I think that's good because I'm not at my best right now. In fact, I'm gonna walk to the fridge.
In fact, why don't you take a break here for a minute, recharge your drink, and
I'll give you 20 more good minutes if I can get the throat cleared.
Go for it.
Give me 3 minutes.
Refill your tea. Okay, my friend.
3 minutes.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, we're listening to Barry Chamish tonight. He is a special guest tonight on Omega Man Radio. This is a live show, Labor Day weekend. And I hope that you're enjoying some fellowship this weekend. I actually had my brother come into town. Got to see him, and we went out and did some fellowship. And, I love being able to stay up late, not have to worry about getting up at the crack of dawn. Not that I do. Not with my schedule these days. I used to. But, some days I don't get to bed until 3 or 5 a.m. At any rate, we've got Barry Chamish talking about the book tonight, Return of the Giants. And you can go to Barry's website, barrychamish.com. You can also go over to Lulu, and he has a number of his books, not just this one. But he's got several other great titles. Barry's a prolific author, and he's got some expertise to, correctly document what's going on. And he gained a lot of notoriety back when he covered the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. That's definitely a book that you want to get. He was on the ground when America was pushing Ariel Sharon buttons to drive out the people from Gaza, which was a sad story. And even Barry got a prophecy. Maybe he hasn't fully realized, but at the very time we were forcing Israel to withdraw from the land, Katrina was pushing people out of their land. So I believe that's God's judgment. Every time we go and put pressure on Israel to give up their God-given right to the land, God pours out judgment on America. And so that should be a warning to America to back off and mind its own business. If you bless Israel, I will bless you, God says. If you curse Israel, I'll curse you. So Genesis 12:3 is still in effect, folks. And Israel is our brothers, and we should support them and protect them, not to cause them to divide their land and give it to the PLOs, which have no right to be there. So That's the Omega Man's 2 cents here. And I certainly believe what Barry's talking about. These people were visited. They did have encounters with what they thought were UFOs. I'll tell you what I believe they were. They were demonic spirits, probably the return of the fallen angels, because the word is clear, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. They were eating and drinking and giving in marriage and knew not till the flood came and took them all away. And clearly there were giants before the flood and after the flood. And I believe that God sent the flood because there was only 8 that had not been genetically contaminated with this alien DNA blood. And if these fallen angels had had their way, they would have had their way with every living being on the planet. And God couldn't allow that to happen. So he sends the flood, destroys them, but clearly they had to make a comeback. Some say a giant latched onto the outside of the ark. I don't believe that. I believe that they came back, and clearly some of these fallen angels are chained up right now awaiting final judgment, but it didn't mean that there weren't others that decided to make the same stupid decision. And if they came back after the flood, what's to say that they're not making a return now? Because clearly people are seeing these things, are being visited at night. They have missing time, and I believe that what you've got are demonic fallen angels that are coming back and mating. I haven't seen the proof of the offspring, but clearly giants existed. Why couldn't they happen again?
All right, I'm back.
You know, have you heard of an author named Steve Quayle, Barry?
Yeah, I know Steve Quayle.
You know, Steve claims to have some giant bones in his collection. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, well, if he's got them, there are a lot of people out there, very skilled archaeologists and paleontologists. Take them out, have them examined. That's been my philosophy. And by the way, that's why this book, remember I told you that I have to watch out for this book because it's used against me, but never have the facts been proven wrong. Never. This whole UFO wave, 87 to 99, is not unknown. I gathered the facts together, and no one else did that. But the incidents, there are many, many Israelis who know about these incidents. They were not, well, what can you say? I'm going to tell you a story to tell you how many knew about the incidents. And this is the story of Beit Shan. This was November 91, I believe. You know what? I'm going to tell you how to get the book again.
Absolutely. Give that information out along with your phone number because you also have a video on this, correct? A DVD?
Yeah, I've got a DVD. It's, you know what? A lot of it's amateurish. You know, these are people holding their cameras outside. But I think it's a pretty good DVD with all its limitations. So first of all, if you want to get the book, Return of the Giants, you go to Lulu, www.lulu.com. You'll see a search box right in my name, Chamish. That's Chamish. Or write Return of the Giants. It'll take you to the book. My website is barrychamish.com. And, yeah, I've got a DVD. I also have a couple books I ordered from Lulu myself that, you know what, if you pay what I pay to Lulu, I'll send you a copy of the book as well.
Now, Barry, do you also have this in ebook form, or is it just hardback? No. Okay.
No,
hey, I want to ask you, why aren't you on Amazon?
My phone? I got to give the phone number first.
Oh, absolutely. Give that out, my friend.
If you want the DVD, and again, the book, I'll have a couple. My number is 904-315-8079. That's 904-315-8079. And so we go on to Beit Shan, 1991.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, this really settled the matter for an awful lot of Israelis. Now, it begins with a guy taking a taxi home. I don't suppose I should add. Yossi Ben Maoz was his name. There, you've got it. But he's the first one to witness outside the taxi, some sort of craft following him. You hear banana shaped a lot, but that's just a side view of a disc. It looks like a banana. It's not an actual banana shape. But he thinks there's some sort of terrorist attack, just like, again, at Chigmona Beach. It must be a terrorist attack, or somebody's in trouble. He tells the taxi driver to stop at the next public phone. Remember, this is 93, not everyone has a cell phone yet. And he phones the chief of police for Beit Sha'an, Yitzchak Mordechai. He tells him to look outside his house. Well, actually, he phoned the police station, and they looked out the station and saw this light. And then they phoned Chief Yitzchak Mordechai, who also saw that this was serious. At 3 in the morning, he calls an anti-terror alert. He calls the Army. He calls the Air Force because it's flying. He calls the security chiefs of all the nearby kibbutzim. By the end of the night, now this goes on for 3.5 hours, they are chasing this disc. Well, the chief of police of Beit Sha'an, who, by the way, was an extremely nice and honest guy, followed by the Army, followed by the Air Force, followed by security personnel, close to 400 people, armed, very armed, are following this disc. Now, the whole story, I could go through little details. It went to the Jordanian border and then didn't cross over, which, by the way, in the end, Yitzchak Mordechai thought that was very, very strange. In the end, I figured it wasn't the craft that didn't cross over, it was the Israelis who didn't cross over. So it stopped because the vehicles didn't follow it anymore. And nonetheless, at a little past 6 in the morning, in broad daylight, hovering in the sky, not that high, by the way, not that high, a matter of a few hundred meters straight up, below 400 armed fighters. One of them is asking Mordechai if he can shoot at it, and Mordechai says, "What for? It didn't shoot at us. Leave it alone." And you had, well, front page news isn't the word for this. Yitzchak Mordechai became an overnight celebrity, and all of the people that followed this talked to their friends and talked to the country. None of the stories I told tonight. I've got lots of stories that were kept out of public view, but these stories were, again, first item on the news, front page headlines, known throughout Israel, that the chief of police of Beit Sha'an led, well, a convoy isn't the word for this, led 400 armed soldiers and civilians chasing a UFO for 3.5 hours from Beit Sha'an to the Jordan River and ending up above Kibbutz Ma'oz Chaim, where it drifted off at 10 past 6 in the morning.
Wow.
There's that story.
Barry, let me ask you a question. I know you served with the IDF. Were you in Israel during the Six-Day War?
No. I was 13 during the Six-Day War. What? Right. No.
I heard that there were reports that during the Six-Day War, there was all types of aircraft sighted in the skies, more than even the fighter jets that were up at the time. Have you ever heard any stories of that?
Oh, I've read all kinds of stories, and again, the level of proof is so poor. I heard the same thing for the Yom Kippur War over the Golan. There was this and this, but again, what I demand is not rumors. I have to have actual proof. I have to have corroborated testimony. I've got to have films, physical evidence, lab results. All of this is necessary to get a story as truly unbelievable to most people to be believed by these same people.
It's not every day that I get an Israeli author on, and you know, you have experience in the land, so this is why I ask these questions. I heard some reports that they have rediscovered the the city of David and maybe the tomb of King David. Any truth to that?
Well, they've been digging in the city of David for the last 20 years. The tomb of David, I've never heard of such a thing.
What about, I heard that a chamber was found and they discovered the sword of Goliath that David took. Any truth to that?
We're entering into nonsense now. Please. We're getting away from the way I do real news, and we're just hitting rumor and gossip, and none of it's true. No. I'll tell you stuff that actually is provably true, if that's what you want.
Oh, no, this is an interesting story, and I believe these items exist over there. I mean, look, I was in, you probably know the region. I went to Jerusalem in 2006, and then I was in Haifa in 2007, went out to the Sea of Galilee, went out to Tiberias, but I was taken somewhere by my guide, and we went out to this area where on the surface you see a couple caves, and underground it was a huge chambers. I guess they used to raise doves there and press oil. But my point in telling that story is you would not have known it from the ground surface. There's got to be all kinds of stuff waiting to be discovered underground, and that's why, I mean, I kind of have an interest in it.
Undoubtedly, but until it is, look, how much time do I have left?
You have exactly 10 minutes.
Look, when you talk about my poor children had such a strange childhood. I took them. We would get reports, and I would, I had to get them out of the house. And it was a good adventure. A couple of times it was for nothing, but one time it wasn't. The boy was probably 7, the girl 6, and I got a phone report that there had been, crop circle is not the right description because it was not a circle, but it was certainly in a corn crop. That part is absolutely true at a place called Beit Zarzir. That's up in the Jezreel Valley, and I was down in Beit Shemesh, and for me to go all that way, and on top of that to pick up a couple of UFO, one a photographer and one a buddy I've worked with, and go all the way, but they said that this one is a beaut. This one you have to see. So I did it. It was, as usual, a Saturday afternoon. All of these events, I don't know why, took place on the Sabbath or on Jewish holidays. My book is filled with them. And they repeat over and over again, and that's another big unexplained, a giant unexplained.
It always comes around the feast days, correct? Or Sabbaths.
No, this was in Passover, 1998, I believe. Again.
Let me ask you a question. You can answer this because you're a Jewish man. Living over here in America right now, when does the actual Sabbath start, Barry? Is that sundown Friday night to sundown Saturday night?
Yeah.
Or is it at a particular time?
No.
Irregardless of where you live, okay.
Sundown to sundown.
Sundown to sundown, okay.
All right, so we go up to Beit Zarzir, and, we got a little advanced information. This was not easy to find. We had to chop through a cornfield, and the corn was high. I mean, this was really healthy corn. It was taller than I was. Suddenly, there was this opening. All of us gasped. We couldn't believe that anything had done this to a cornfield. Now, what I did with the kids, I told them to look on the ground and show me anything that looks out of place. Bring it to me. We found nothing, but the kids were very good hunters. In the meantime, we took measurements with tape, and we measured, and we did, we made a shape out of what we had seen, and by the end of the day, at least it was totally photographed, and we knew the dimensions of whatever this was. Now, we were dead tired, and we had just been in something that, again, you want to talk that tricksters did this. put it in the middle of nowhere would likely it would never have been found again. So we pulled into a restaurant just to get our bearings, and we looked at the drawings and we looked at the dimensions, and I saw what it was. At first they believed it was some sort of circle with a message. But then you look at the drawings and you look at the dimensions, and it was much wider. Well, I'll just say the wing.
So just indentions there, no burn marks at all?
No, it was world flat.
Wow.
It was world clockwise. No, there was nothing like that. Something swirled. Eventually, I took the measurements. It was a disc-shaped vehicle of some kind, some sort of disc-shaped vehicle. I said, take a look at the widest dimension, and then take a look at the length, and then we saw that it was a craft that in its own way had burned itself into the corn. And again, why, oh why would anybody do this as a hoax? A thing like this would take, there were no tracks. There was nothing that would even suggest a hoax. But that's what these crop circle people are saying. That's their defense. We got a couple of kids to come in with sleds and to knock down the corn and to make this. That's the excuse being given. I assure you, no human being made this thing. Now, again, when you're talking about proof, we've got photos from every angle and direction. We've got my little kids who were there. We know for an actual fact this took place. Now, I don't have the time to go on. The difference between my book and speculative UFO stuff and people with giant bones in their backyard, which I give zero possibility for being the truth. The difference is, well, it's the difference between a junior detective and a police officer. Unless you can go to court and convince a jury that this happened, you don't have the right to write about it.
I believe you saw it, no doubt about it, and I believe that something was there and made the indention.
I wouldn't call it exactly an indention. The cord was 8 feet tall. Whatever it was, again, was thoroughly witnessed.
Return of the Fallen Angels, my friend. That's what it was.
Well, again, there's no proof of that whatsoever. When we were there, we brought people from the kibbutz, and we took them to the site and took their names down, and we corroborated testimony. We got testimony every which way. We took photos every which way. And, you know, my little kids had an experience that to this day they haven't forgotten. The point of the matter is, if it can't be proved in court, it's not in my book. I'll tell you how to get the book for the last time.
Absolutely. Give out all your contact information, including how they can get the DVD.
You go to www.lulu.com. You either write in my name, which is C-H-A-M-I-S-H, Chamish. That'll get you there. Or write in Return of the Giants. That should do the trick. My website is barrychamish.com. And I do have DVDs. And again, email me with your address. I'll make you pay only what I had to pay for the book. I should be getting it within a week. And phone me, 904-315-8079. That's 904-315-8079. And I'll send you the DVD. And pre-warning you, it'll be cheap. It won't be an expense in your life.
Barry, what are you working on next? Any books in the hopper?
No. I have to deal with I've got so many books out there now, and now I just have to find out how to sell them better.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why aren't you up on Amazon.com? Have you ever tried that?
Yeah, they suck. I'm on Lulu because you don't have to pay a whole bunch of money I'm on Lulu.com. That's my Amazon.
Okay, Lulu.com. But you've got nothing else on your heart right now that you want to write?
I write every time something serious comes in. Look, what I'm writing has nothing to do with UFOs anymore. During that period, well, the amount of publicity and even the money I made was more than all my political work combined. The UFO material went out on international television, and I think sightings still exist on the Sci-Fi Channel or somewhere. This was very, very good journalism. That's why this book is very different. It offers almost no speculation, and if I speculate, I warn you ahead of time that I am speculating. All the rest was hard evidence.
What I want to know is what happened to the guy that had his gonad blow up like a grapefruit. Did it go back down?
By the morning. Nothing happened. He's still
Poor
the
guy.
sheriff of Yatzis. I went back there a couple years later to film him. He's a good guy. What else happened to him?
I was about ready to pass out an offering plate for him, take up a donation. Poor guy. He was just trying to do his job.
Poor guy. He lives a good life. What's so poor about him?
Hey, let me ask you. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Have you ever been out to the Sodom and Gomorrah to investigate that out there in the Dead Sea?
I've gone there, and it's not to investigate. There are digs. There's digs on the Jordanian side, which they're getting. They looked at the Jordanian side. They found a couple of 6-foot skeletons. They found 7 of them. And
wow.
They investigated if they were giants or not. They concluded they were tall. They were 6 feet tall when everyone else was about 5'3", 5'4", but that didn't make them giants.
Did you see any sulfur balls out there littering the desert floor?
They're all over the place. That Rabbi Marvin Anselman told me to go look. That everybody knows about that. I mean, everybody knows about them. They're on tours. You know, there was this guy, he was half hustler and half legitimate, who claimed to have discovered the sulfur balls, which I have been shown 30 years, was Wyeth. His name was
Ron Wyatt?
Ron Wyeth.
Oh, wow, you knew the guy?
I didn't know him. I saw him finding the sulfur balls and claiming that they were his discovery. They had been known for many, many, many years before he arrived and found them.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Speaking of Ron Wyatt, him and his sons went over into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Get arrested, of course, but Mount Sinai.
They went up a hill. This is where Moses got. Listen, there's a lot of baloney out there. This one is better than most.
Jabal al-Luz, the Mountain of God.
This one is better than most. Now, look, that's the whole problem with the scientific method and the amateur method. He's got an argument, but I've seen the same argument for a hill in the Negev where they found the altars and they found...
Well, but here's the main difference. The Saudi Arabian government actually put barbed wire fence around the mountain.
Yeah, I know.
And there are Hebrew hieroglyphics in the caves. So where did that come from?
Nobody wrote Hebrew at the time of Moses. What they had was an ancient script. If it was ancient script, you're dating 3,400 years ago, then you would have something of great interest. Look, this is one of the better ones. All right? That's all I can say about this guy. As for the balls of sulfur, Rabbi Marvin Anselman told me about them 20 years before Ron Wyatt rediscovered them. The fact of the matter is I have a certain method. And by the way, that film he did, which I did watch, he lives up to the method 75% of the time, but then he goes off with conclusions that aren't backed by the evidence, and it becomes a little iffy. But he's one of the better ones, all right?
Did you see any ruins that were petrified when God smote it with
No, I didn't see
brimstone?
Didn't see any petrified ruins. I did see balls.
Yeah.
All this stuff. I had a good rabbi friend who told me about this stuff, and that's a separate topic. He's alive, but he's got Alzheimer's now. That's Rabbi Antleman. He told me about the balls, and I went and I saw balls. You know, he was right there. They were.
Have you ever been down to the Gulf of Aqaba and looked for any of the chariot wheels, the Dead Sea crossing, or the crossing?
It's not the Gulf of Aqaba. It's already all the way to Sharm el-Sheikh is where wide is complete. Don't be silly. What I'm going to do, put on my snorkel mask and go down 300 feet and identify wheels. Look, what I've done is enough. It's good enough. It fits in the puzzle.
Well, now, this is a great book, folks. I want to thank Barry for coming on tonight. I would encourage you to go get the book, The Return of the Giants. Also order the DVD. And, Barry, give out your telephone number one more time, please.
904-315-8079. Send me your address, and in a week I'm going to have the book. It won't cost you a penny more than what I paid for it.
Folks, order this book. Get a hold of his other books. He's got some awesome material out there. If you missed the beginning of the show, it'll be available in MP3. Barry, always as a pleasure. It was to have you on tonight, and you're welcome on the microphone anytime, my friend.
Okay, very nice show. We'll hear from you soon.
Shalom, shalom.
Bye, all.
That was Barry Chamish.